Well, thank you all for coming. Looks like a lovely group of people. I had thought of doing this by picking different photographs and speaking about them. However, since there are so many of you, I don't want you to have to keep walking around, and I have another space over there. So I will just go through some pictures here. I think the situation as it is now is way worse than it was in the 80s when I started. At that time, my focus was on cross-dressers, people who had not transitioned fully, might have wanted to, but hadn't. And most of the people that I got to meet were in a state of terrific worry, guilt, anxiety, fear, and when they would get together, which in the pre-electronic period, they didn't know where to find each other, and the relief was incredible when they did. There were, at that time, conferences in most cities where people might go on a Saturday night and change there rather than arrive cross-dressed. So the pictures that are in this space represent earlier work from the 80s. After going to my first conference, as Kristen mentioned, I got totally involved. In the beginning, I had no idea about any of this. I consider that it was a great fluke for me to encounter a group of people in New Orleans on Mardi Gras. They invited me to join them for breakfast, me with camera equipment, about to go out to photograph Mardi Gras. But this lovely, extremely ornately dressed people were sitting at a table and asked me to join them. And it was the luckiest thing, because right after breakfast, they all went out, and there was a swimming pool outside the dining room, and they lined up to have a picture taken by somebody who was with them. And so I saw that, and I thought, I wonder if it's okay for me to take a picture. Who am I to them? But anyway, I did, and it was an amazing experience because there were 9 people, four, and one person in the middle who was looking back at me into the camera. And I felt like I wasn't looking at a man or a woman, but somehow the essence of a human being. And I was totally moved. And so I immediately wanted to have this person in my life. That person was Vicki West, and there are 2 pictures of her, one here and one in the other room. And so she took me to every place she turned out, I should say, to live 20 blocks away from me in New York City. And she took me wherever she was going, to bars, to conferences, whatever. What was one of the things that is amazing about Vicki is that she had a very good job as a man, worked for Abrams Publishing Company, which is a very respected, and was the book designer. So, on the other hand, as Vicki, she did the illustrations and design of Drag magazine, which was important in those days, and other trans-related things. So this was a doubly gifted person. And so that is Vicky over here with dancing the can-can with my children when they were little. As you can see, they were little. And having a wonderful time. She was somebody who became part of my family. My husband, my late husband, liked her also. So anyway, that is my beginning. And I have essentially followed the activities, the evolution of the trans community for 50 years. It has been fascinating following and being part of the political activism of the 90s and all the other changes that have occurred during those years. I photographed people everywhere, in conferences, at their homes, other places as well. And it's always been really exciting to do and moving. For some people who had never been photographed before, early on, I would encourage them to, I'm talking right now of male to female. I would encourage them to find the girl inside of them, the feminine person that couldn't be out in the world full time, or possibly as seldom as once a year. So it was very varied. And I had to learn how to photograph, because my experience before that was always with people who were in some way artistic and sort of knew what their bodies were and how to put themselves in space. But in this case, these were people who could be anything from truck drivers, CEOs, any kind of job. So these were in the 80s, there were no artists in the group that I photographed. So I had to learn how to work with them. And the techniques, I developed techniques on how to do this. Somebody at the recently said at the opening, actually, something that I had never quite heard before, and I really like it, that the pictures are intimate and comfortable. And I think that's true. Most of the people who I worked with, well, all of the pictures you see here, I think, are pictures of people who were comfortable in allowing me to photograph them. I'm open to specific questions, or if you like, I can just pick a few and talk about their stories. What would you all like?
Here's some stories.
Stories? Yeah. Okay. So I'll tell you where I took them and why. How about that? That sounds hard, doesn't it? All right, I'll start with, I'll start over here. This picture was taken at Fantasia Fair, but it could have been at any conference. And I just, afterwards, I couldn't believe how funny it was with the giraffe, tiny little giraffe there, and then the shape of this camera, which I don't think we could find anymore. And just kind of the pleasure of their interaction. this is somebody named Colleen who wrote poetry and lived in Michigan and worked as a janitor, which was not really appropriate for somebody like her. What I was intrigued about when I took the picture were all these squares. I mean, how she matched the car and the house and so on. And here is, in this picture, which is early on, this was, I think, one of the first couples that I photographed. One of my goals was to make people of transgender people seem like and be like regular, ordinary people with families and leading, generally speaking, a regular life. I wanted to be different, to do different work from people who turned them into freaks, because so many other artists did that, other photographers, took away respect. So I was looking for couples and couples with children who I could photograph. So this is a couple, a married couple. When I came to the door to photograph them, guess who met me at the door? I was so surprised and delighted. And then they all sat down together, and I thought, what a nice collection of legs. And also the black and white. I mean, when I used to go around with a color, two cameras, one color film, the other black and white. And then I would decide what I wanted to do. And so when I saw them and the dog, I thought, well, this is obvious, isn't it? Can you see me if I go all the way here? No. It's a picture, you have to believe me. It's a picture taken in Unitarian Church in Provincetown. Many people, again, in those days, didn't feel accepted by their churches, and they felt guilty and very sad that they couldn't go to church. And that picture was the first one I took in that church. And some people were so moved that they were acceptable, that they could really be okay in a church. So that was important. And some of the leaders from the community are also in that picture. I'm not going to go into that, unless you want me to. Now, most of the pictures I've taken are of people who are either cross-dressers or transgender, transsexual, the range. And, but I also had some pictures of drag artists. I don't call them drag queens, but drag artists. And this is Toby, who became a friend of mine, and it's my favorite picture. And I'll say him in this case. It was after a long day of shooting, and finally we both got tired. And he lay down like this, in this sort of fetal position. And I got this. People give me gifts along the way. This picture came about in a pride, a gay pride, and we were crossing the street. This is one of those great moments where or to me, great, where he was walking towards me and I was walking towards him, and I grabbed this picture. And I was so happy that that happened. We never even said a word to each other, just one of those things. So this picture is also drag artists. At the time, they weren't even full-time. And we were walking around in the Lower East Side in New York and happened to see this painting on the background of a wall. And it says, as you see, it's the story of life. You exist and then you exit. This is the one I already spoke about. And here, this one, it was wonderful. She lives in Portland now, and she came to the opening. It was thrilling to re-see people that I photographed a long time ago. This is Jen with her mother, who was dying of cancer. And they allowed me to photograph them. Now let's see, how far can I go on this side? I do have a lot of, I wouldn't say absolutely erotic, but somewhat erotic pictures that I've taken over the years. And this one is my favorite because I feel like it presents both masculine and feminine in a body. How many others should I tell you about? More? Yeah. Okay. This was taken at, I believe, also Fantasia Fair, and she was about to do Annie Gets Your Gun, and I don't know what she was going to do, but what I love about this is the contrast of images of two people who were at the same event. And if I stand here, you can see, yeah. This is kind of just fun. This was a couple that dressed alike. Obviously, they have a good marriage. And they're holding Ernie and Bert. But Ernie is cross-dressed. And Bert is too, actually. So, and in the back, I love the pink. And then in the back, there's a pink house. That's one of those lucky things. I guess I can come this way. Okay. This is somebody packing up after a conference. Generally, people took a lot of clothes with them for conferences. Again, these are cross-dressers tend to take a lot of clothes. Transsexuals on the whole didn't bother. So this is another married couple out at the beach on Long Island. You have to excuse my voice. I have a cold, in case you didn't notice. So I love the space and their intimacy, and at the same time, this odd figure in black. What was going on inside that person? How you're craning your necks, but too bad.
Everybody can turn. We can all turn.
This one was at a different conference, not Fantasia Fair. It was a conference in the Midwest. And she just kind of arrived in it, and I always think of her as the shy girl. And in the back, you can sort of see other attendees. So you can get a feeling that she was not alone. This is one you should talk about, Heidi. This is Lou Sullivan, who everybody wants pictures of him these days. He just published, a book was just published. What was so interesting, well, among other things, about Lou Sullivan is that he transitioned from female to male. And doctors at that time always thought that you had to be attracted to the opposite sex if, if you transitioned. But Lou was attracted to women and to men, bisexual, and very sexually active. Sadly, he was at the end of his life when I took this picture because he got AIDS. You want to add anything, Heidi?
That he started the trans mask movement.
Yes.
Really, and the FTM, female to male organization, he started that, and then in your next picture is the person who took that to FTM International. But he really was sort of the place everybody got started. They look at him, here's an attractive, smart, energetic young man who would write letters to everybody. He kept a mailing list by hand, and he wrote to so many people across the country, and he was their only source for having connection with the trans world, particularly for trans men, because trans men often didn't get as much attention as trans women. So yes, so a lot is owed to Lou Sullivan. Yes, very much.
Yes, thank you, Heidi. One reason Heidi knows so much is because she's married to this wonderful gentleman. And
who would be here today if he could? Who would be here today if he could?
Yeah, he's too important. So that's Jameson Green, and it's at a lunch at, I think, at Fantasia Fair. He thinks it's at a coffee shop. We are not in agreement on this. Many fights, yeah. This is Virginia Prince, who was incredibly important early on. She was an inventor of sorts. She came up with the name with transgender. She wrote little books. She created magazines, and at the time, she shipped them. So they went through the post office, and she got into trouble for that because this was considered inappropriate mail. And nevertheless, she persisted. And what am I quoting? Nevertheless, she persisted? No, nobody knows. Okay. Some people didn't like her because she was very dogmatic. And I always appreciated her because she gave so much and thought through so many things and argued with so many people. And she had a soft side too. I used to photograph her in lingerie, and that is not included here because I like this picture better. I worked on a number of films as a still photographer, and I took this picture at the piers in New York of 3 really beautiful, glamorous people who did different kinds of work. Eva was a hairdresser, you might get that idea, and she's from Hawaii and got very politically involved. And she was a performer and also died of AIDS. But at the time, she was a well-known performer. And I couldn't think of Kim Ono. Kim Ono. And has been quite successful as a politician in Hawaii. How are the necks? Are you okay? Are you okay? Because then if you want me to keep talking, then I will go across here. Drive Jesse crazy. Intimacy was important to me, to be able to reach the person inside. Or this is Nancy. It was her first day on hormones, and she couldn't stop crying. We were in, I think we were in Berlin, took a trip. And this is a couple, Maxwell and Carissa. It's Carissa's leg that Maxwell is shaving. Maxwell was a fascinating person. He and his then partner, they started out as a lesbian couple, and lived in the Midwest. And then Maxwell decided or felt he needed to transition. And in the meantime, they moved to Florida. And so they looked like a heterosexual couple. There's Maxwell and the other, Jake at the time. Jake had a feminine name originally. And then at a certain point, Jake wanted to transition also. So suddenly they were a gay male couple. And then Jake left. He found a woman online who lived in California. So he abandoned Maxwell. So at that point, Maxwell moved to Atlanta, which has a very substantial transgender community. And we continue. This is Maxwell with a wonderful partner. They met, Carissa was a performer at a nightclub, and Maxwell and Carissa started a relationship, which I photographed in great detail. A lot of this is in Southern Comfort, which is a film you may have heard of, which is a really, really good film. So I always say, and he was very short. Carissa was quite tall, and she called him Munchkin Man. And they were a very close relationship. The dog, I think, was embarrassed and left. Once again, here is another, I should say, the 6 faces of Maxwell Anderson, or the 6 phases. Anyway, he was not a particularly well-educated person, and Jake was a historian and a very knowledgeable person. And he started tutoring Maxwell, and of course did more than that, but it was quite a wonderful idea to learn proper English, for example. I thought that was a wonderful relationship. Now, youth. All this time, of course, there were young people who were questioning who they were. And there used to be a conference specifically for young people. I mean, anybody else could go, but it was called True Spirit, and it was in Washington, D.C. It doesn't exist anymore, but these were people who were too young to drink, so I sat on the floor with them and we had a picnic. No trips to bars. And I mean, you can see they're sort of working things out. Unfortunately, that conference ended because there was a huge snowstorm and we were stuck in the hotel, could not leave, and a lot of them didn't have enough money to buy food or to do anything or to get home. And they sort of went wild and kind of messed up the hotel. And the hotels, you know, they were young. That's it. They were young. And sadly, that conference doesn't exist anymore. It would be so needed now, I think. Okay, this is, all right, twisting of necks. This is well, it's a family that I have photographed for years because I like them. Tiffany is trans and married to a cis woman. They already had one child, and who I have pictures of. But then they had these twins. And so I always call this Tiffany and the Crying Twins. It was really difficult for them. You know, they each have a different issue. Asperger's and HD, what is it? HDH, where you...
ADHD,
yeah. So plus the girl who had no problems. But they ended up in the mornings going to 3 different schools. I mean, wow. Yes, for 3 different issues. Now this is the famous Sylvia Rivera. Everybody seems to think that trans politics started with Sylvia Rivera. That's not true. There has been activism, quiet activism, for years and years. But anyway, at the time, Sylvia was homeless, and I was working on a film with maybe you've heard of him, Rosa von Braunheim. No, anybody? Well, Heidi, yes. I've known Heidi for years. We have traveled in the same circles. Anyway, so I saw this Marlboro man up there, and I thought, the contrast between the Marlboro man and Sylvia, who was, if you don't know, a major activist in her time. She was at the Stonewall riots. By contrast, you know what unites this side? The color red. This was taken in Asheville, North Carolina, at a cemetery. I did a shoot of Asheville has a lot of very interesting people, and they came up with the idea of photographing at the graveyard, beautiful graveyard. Anyway, this is Sam, who you can take either way, and I thought they were pretty extraordinary. At the time was she, but now I would say definitely they. Well, I'll do 3 more, and then I'm open for questions. Because I can't have you can look on your own, please do, of the other pictures on the other side. And also you should know that I have 5 books. So you're welcome to look at them and buy them. That would be okay. So this is, if I stand here, I block you totally, never mind. This is an academic brilliant person who has taught at Harvard and all kinds of top schools. And she's from California, and she has a lot of tattoos. I actually photographed her getting a tattoo. Anyway, she had had a dream of herself being very fierce, looking very fierce. And she asked me to photograph her so that she looks fierce. I don't know if you all think she looks fierce. I hope you do, but maybe not. Does anybody think she looks fierce? Yeah? Good. I'll tell her. And this is Isabel, a young person who was just about to graduate from Cooper Union, and she chose a few photographers to photograph her, and I was one of the lucky people. And she was early on, and I don't know, I think she was getting her hair dyed. What can I say? Very, very gifted person. A photographer, I should say, also. And this picture was taken in Seattle. Not in the city, as you can see, but sort of at a watering hole. John loves swimming and water, so we decided that's where to take the picture. And I think, well, he looks remarkable. I think he's not afraid of showing that he's F to M. Is anybody unclear how it would be obvious? No? Okay, that's good. Sophisticated audience. Yeah. Okay, I'm going to stop describing pictures. And I'm here in case you want to ask me anything. Surely. Oh, thank you.
Don't be shy, I'm sure.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Were you ever asked to take a picture that someone was too nervous that you couldn't capture something?
Well, usually I have the ability to put people in some level of comfort. And even if somebody is nervous and we start working together, they usually open up and become more comfortable. And then when they see the pictures, they're usually pretty thrilled.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And there are people I haven't gotten it, and I photograph them more often until we are at ease. Or I say, okay, this isn't really going to be anything special, but I can take a nice picture of them. Yeah. Thanks for the question. That's a good one.
Thank you for answering.
What?
I said thank you for answering it.
Oh. Heidi?
Yeah, do you typically go to like conferences or other things in order to get pictures, or how do you find your subjects? So some of them are, individuals. You ask friends of friends. I mean, how do you find your subjects?
I did find a lot of people at conferences, got to know them, and then I really wanted to, my ideal was to find people who I could photograph at home and with their families. Mostly that wasn't the case, but it happened some of the time. It was always difficult at conferences to get an interesting picture because hotel backgrounds don't say anything, whereas if you're with somebody and go to their home, for example, there's more. You can get a lot more visual information in a person's, with photographing somebody in their own place, their own surroundings, and people in their environment, really is what I like. So, for example, James, who we met over there, gave me the name of John when I was going to Seattle. He works as a librarian. And so we met and decided to work together. And he said, let's go to the watering hole. So that's that. I can tell you, some of these pictures were taken in New York, but really most of them were not, because people always assume, oh, you shot it in San Francisco or LA or New York. But my goal was to get people in other parts of the country where it would be less expected. And so that's what I did. How did I get people? I think just by meeting them and getting to know them in different places, or in some cases, somebody would suggest that I could go visit some. Well, there's one over there, but that doesn't make sense to talk about it. Somebody said, you've got to go visit Felicity. There's a person named Felicity. And yes, that was good. Any other questions? Yes?
Yeah. Did you circulate any of the images at the conferences that you would attend, or did you really just share them with the sitters on a one-on-one basis?
Well, I did have a show in Provincetown, so that way they could see it. But at the conferences, I almost always did a workshop and slideshow, and I would talk about the images. So yes, I did share. I always wanted to, every conference I went to, I shared images. And also to conferences that were not specifically for the trans community. I did a lot of talking in the past. I also did radio, television shows, and movies. So I'm always trying to share, because I hope that this work does some good. Not only for the people themselves, but also the outside world. My goal was for people to feel that they could relate to the photographs I took. So that's what I tried to do, but now we have to deal with a mountain and go back. But surely that will pass. That's the hope. And trans people will not. I mean, we know that less than 1% of the population has any LGBT, well, maybe more of, but no, specifically trans, I guess I should say, is less than 1% of the population. And because there's the vulnerability aspect, the current government is having fun, really. I think they are having fun. Do not dare to do that, but they do. Should not dare. That's a downer. Anybody have a cheerier question? Yeah.
I give you a chance to open your water, but
Yeah. No, it's open. I just can't do two things at once. Am I using the mic carefully?
yeah, you are. I'm wondering if you can speak to your post-production and your editing. Are you the type of person that kept a dark room in your house as you grew up?
I did,
sort of thing?
yeah. not what, no, I'll just, you hold it for a second.
Oh, okay, cool.
No, I'll take it back. Thanks. I did not have a darkroom growing up, but I had one, and later, when I started doing photography, I always had a darkroom until some years ago when I didn't, when I also started using digital. As for post-production, I did not edit as carefully and as often as I should have. I was too interested in just taking pictures, but not keeping anything. Date, place. I was awful, and now I'm suffering for it. All I wanted was to take the picture. So as far as editing is concerned, I love editing, believe it or not, but I didn't do that either. Along the way, in many cases, there are people in this room who have edited with me. One of such is Horace Long, who's in the second, who worked for me for 13 years, he says. I never realized it was that long. And then the young man with the video, Jesse, works for me now. And we don't deal with, I have a large printer, and we use that now. Does that answer that question? Or?
Good answer, thanks. That was a good answer, thank you.
You're welcome anytime. Any other? Yeah, Heidi.
I know, double dipping. What are your future plans? Do you have things you want to accomplish?
Yeah, absolutely. And also in other subjects. For example, I am working on a series on Texas. My late husband was a Texan, and from a very different background as mine. And so in a way, I'm exploring, because I don't really know that the background that they're, just to simplify this, they're Trumpians, evangelists, and things that I have never encountered. But they're all very nice, just to clarify this, even if we don't agree on anything. So I'm doing, what I decided to do is I dug up old portraits of the family and then some later pictures. And then I have a good friend in Texas who will drive me around. I can't drive around Texas, and I sort of photograph or capture whatever interests me along the way. So I have these images of Texas and images of the family, and I'm trying to figure out what to do, whether to keep them as two separate units or mix them. And most people who I've shown them to think I should mix them. I'm somehow a little trepidatious about this, but anyway, I'm working on it. I have, as was mentioned, I have worked on a number of series on other subjects besides trans. One of my favorite series actually is on birth and babies, and my archives are at Duke University, and they refuse to take those pictures. So I am wondering what to do. And the reason they won't take them, these are pictures that were taken 50 years ago, you know, a long time ago. And they said, well, they're not released. So pictures of birth where it's not released. I think at this stage in life is a little unnecessary to be worried about. I have photographed in a number of countries. 2 of the books that are here. One is from Cuba, Trans-Cuba. The other is Transcendence, Spirit Mediums in Burma and Thailand. Well, those are both related, of course, to gender variance, gender nonconformity. But I'm not going to list all the different subjects that I have been interested. I could tell you I did a lot of work with modern dancers, which I love doing. Along with photography, I've made collages and paintings. I come from a painting background. I was a painter before I became a photographer. A lot of talking here. Tell me and ask me anything you like, or we're going to end.
I have one more question.
Yeah.
Earlier you said that you wanted to show families and show the trans experience as being a normal part of society.
Right.
Prior to taking photographs of the trans community, was that something you always tried to do, take images from a different perspective from what the mainstream was doing, or was that something specific that intrigued you about the trans culture and trans community?
I wasn't necessarily conscious of trying to do that. Sure, in principle, yes. And with trans people, I just felt I was just lucky, just a fluke. But as I spent more and more time, I realized how I wanted to shoot them. And it's been a very long, hard road to get this work out and seen and bought and all of that shown. So I'm very happy to be showing here at Blue Sky. Lovely place. So I think that's about it. Yeah.
Thank you. We're very happy to have you here. Very proud of you.